The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to All You Can Eat. It's the podcast about deliciousness. I'm your host, Rob Rosenthal, coming to you here with episode number 124 of All You Can Eat. Tonight's episode is all about London. Because I have just returned from a delightful week in that great city. And here's the bottom line. If you hear nothing else for the rest of this podcast, know this: London never disappoints. I say that to you as someone who is an avowed variety junkie, which is to say that I will always opt for the new and different rather than the tried and the true. But there are certain times in one's life when you end up going back to a place that you've been before, and for whatever reason, and you go back happily. And London is one of those places. Now, before I start to tell you about the experience over there, and I mean, we'll talk about the city and the sights and all the things you can do and you can see, and by all means, all the things you can eat, because, whoa, talk about deliciousness. I had a feast over in that city. But speaking about food, and as someone who comes to you regularly with recommendations, tonight's program is brought to you by the good people from Hubs. And Hubs makes peanuts, and they make the best peanuts, which come to you from the great state of Virginia. Now, there's probably other places like Georgia that make nice peanuts. I think that the peanuts in Virginia are world-class best. And to me, if I had to choose one peanut, it would be Hubs. And I'm telling you this as a guy who has I'm going to say a compulsive, obsessive relationship with peanuts. I've done podcasts or programs before about nuts in general, and damn, I like a good pistachio. But if I had to choose one nut for the rest of my life, it would actually be a peanut. And if I had to choose one brand, it would be Hubs. Now, I make these recommendations just so that you know, without prejudice. I'm on my own here. I only promote, endorse those things that I truly believe in. They're not paying me to do this. But the Hubs peanuts are spectacular. They're spectacular because they are large, they are extremely crunchy, and they are really, really delicious. The hardest thing with the Hubs is to stop eating them. Now, they did send me, just out of nowhere. Well, I think that they wanted me to try some of their other product. So Hubs now makes the honey roasted peanuts. You're going to want to get your hands on those too. So you have the original ones. The honey roasted ones are the same giant peanuts. It's just that, they're sweetened with honey. Fantastic. Also kind of addictive. And I got to tell you, they also sent some peanut brittle. There's no way that I can do justice to how fabulous that peanut brittle is. It's awesome. If you haven't had, or even if you have had peanut brittle, you know that it's crunchy, sweet. The peanuts are in this super sugary candy coated chunks of brittle, and fabulous on their own. I'm sure they would be great if you crunched them on top of vanilla ice cream. Folks, whatever you do, if you want yourself some peanuts, you go ahead and look for Hubs online, HUBS. And as I said, the regular old hubs, fantastic peanuts. The honey roasted hubs, delicious. And then the peanut brittle, man, that's a good gift if you don't eat it yourself. It's just, that's a fantastic product. So that's hubs. Now, let's talk about London, England, because it is a lovely, world-class city. And I'm going to say this at the outset, whether you have been before or have not been, London never disappoints. Why? Because it's a good looking city. It's a world class city. And when I say good looking, I mean, it's good to look at. There are some cities that are more lovely, more beautiful than others. And part of what makes London so nice is, it's old. So the architecture is interesting. The buildings are handsome. Some of them, of course, are historic. You have the Thames River running through the city. So there's a lot of water, and you walk along the water along the river and cross bridges from one side of London to the other. Just a great city to be in terms of the visual appeal. And speaking of walking from one side to the other, it's a great city to walk. It's easy to get around walking. Now, of course, some things are going to be more distant than others, so everything is a function of your interest in walking and the weather. Because London, can be a little bit overcast. It can be rainy. I had the greatest week ever. I mean, we just got super lucky on the weather. It was beautiful every day, 60s, maybe even 70s, sunny. I mean, it was rare. I mean, even the people from London were going, thanks for the weather, because they're just not accustomed to that. But the city is easy to get around, and it's broken into a whole lot of districts, and each of the districts is a little bit distinct, and each is interesting in its own way. And you can just you could spend a day in comfortable shoes walking around that city. You can also, I suppose, hop on their subway system, the metro, the underground, or as they like to call it over there, the tube. The tube is easy to use because it's just nicely laid out and the maps make it easy. And, things have gotten even easier than they had been historically. You had to go buy a ticket, and in order to buy a ticket for a particular destination, you spent some time at the ticket booth kind of figuring out whether you were going to pay, £2 or $2.10, depending on where you were going. And then you have to hold on to the ticket because you have to have it to exit the train station. Well, these days, like every other major metropolitan area in the world, all you need is either a credit card or a phone, and you just tap now to get yourself in. So London, not only just good to look at district by district, but as I said, real super easy to get around if you don't feel like walking. And I'll be damned, a lot of great things to see in that city. Let's not forget that there's an awful lot of history in England and in London, from Buckingham Palace to all the you don't need me to tell you. You can go to any tourist guide and go, what are the top 10 or 20 sites to see in London, and the Queen's Jewels, and it just goes on and on. There's 1,000 things. If seeing historical sites is your jam, you go. You can do that for a whole week. I would also point out, from a cultural perspective, London is awesome because you have just a ton of amazing museums. I happen to have gone to the Natural History Museum. You have the National Portrait Gallery. There are always beautiful exhibits that change all around London. So there's a beautiful museum thing scene, if that is your thing. Either free or eminently affordable. A ton of great things to see if you want to just float around museum to museum. World class, again. There are also, on a cultural level, and of course, in addition to the museums, in addition to the sites that you can see, you have theater, and it's probably the most famous theater district community in the world. Unless New York's Broadway is, but I mean, London theater is the real deal. And let's not forget that they speak the same language, although some of the words are different and the accent, of course, is different. But yeah, you can go see a show. Now, I'm going to say something that may not, that may alienate my. Well, let's put it this way. I'm not big into musical theater. I'm not a big theater guy to begin with, but my least favorite shows to go to happen to be musicals. Now, that said, I ended up at a musical production called Six, about the 6 wives of Henry VIII, and this show was fantastic. I mean, fun and funny, and written from the perspective of the wives who changed history around a little bit and entertained and sang, and I loved every one of the 80 minutes of that show. So, theater in general, great. If you want to see something just fantastic, I just love the show called Six. Now, you may or may not know this, but they have those ticket booths down there, which are a fantastic way to save money on theater tickets because they're selling them at what becomes available at lower prices. So you can always go to the tickets booth in the theater area. You look for that, see what's available that day, what you want to see, and go for it. Whether you go for the matinee or a nighttime show, fantastic theater in that city. And other types of shows as well. One of the things that you want to do when you go to a big city is go check out Time Out magazine. Now, Time Out magazine used to be just kind of available as a regular, magazine. You would pick it up. Of course, now it's online. And the beautiful of Time Out, whether it's Time Out London or Time Out New York as an example, but in this case, Time Out London, is every week they're coming out with something to tell you what's going on in that town. What kind of shows you might want to see, what kind of restaurants you might want to go to, what events are free, what kind of experiences you can have in that city. So again, just a ton of things to see and do. And one of the ways to get yourself kind of situated and familiar with what's going on is you go into Time Out London online, or grab a hard copy of the Time Out London magazine and see what's happened in that week. Because as I said, there's speeches, presentations, art exhibits, gatherings, and again, of course, all the usual, restaurants and theater reviews and all that kind of stuff. Now, one of the things also about this city is that they have outstanding parks, to say nothing of Hyde Park, probably one of the 10 great parks in the world. And it's just beautiful to walk through because these people, man, if you don't know this, these people take their gardens and their flowers and their plants seriously. So if you're in the walking mood, you go ahead and walk around Hyde Park or some of the other parks. I mean, you can literally rent a bike in London and go on a, 20, 30, 40, however many mile tour you want. You can look that up and go, hey, I feel like spending the day biking. And you can bike a route specifically through, a park system. But anyway, I just went for I picked up, they have the city bikes there. Well, they're not city bikes. Those bikes are city bikes, but they're sponsored by a different bank, Santander. And for a couple of pounds, which is what, $3, let's call it, you hop on a bike and bike around Hyde Park. on lanes that where there's no vehicular traffic. Beautiful ride on a lovely day. Plenty to see. Stop by if you want to sit down anywhere to have a little coffee and a bite. Go feed the birds, or just float around that park on a bike is delightful. Really inexpensive way to enjoy a morning or an afternoon. Take a peek at the gardens. Just a fantastic way to, again, experience a city, and in this case, really one of the world-class parks. You also may want to consider, and I didn't do it on this trip, but I have before, one of the things I always really, really appreciate is taking those bike tours that they offer of the city. And I've done it on bikes. I like doing that a lot. I've seen people do it on Segways. I know that I did like a lovely Segway tour. That was in Copenhagen. I don't know what the situation is in London, maybe because there are more cars and they're going the wrong direction. I don't know what the Segway situation is. But one of the bike tours that you can take that's kind of exciting, again, I'm not positive that they have it in London. I'd be surprised if they didn't, but it's a tour of, kind of like the dining scene. Like those bike tours can be specialized. And one of the other things that makes London fantastic is, I'll get to the food, because that for me was, I'm a food guy, and generally, that's my subject area. But, there's hardly a corner in that town where there's not a pub. I mean, these people take that beer drinking seriously, and there's a pub everywhere you go. And everywhere you go, there's a crowd, and everywhere you go, there's a crowd drinking beer, and I'm talking about all hours of the day and night. So one of the things you can do is, talk about a pub crawl. There's no better place in the world to be sampling beer than in London's pubs, and you don't have to walk more than a block or two to find whatever the local pub is. And go do your thing. Go drink beer, go play some darts, go have some, gastro pub food. I'm pretty sure that the idea of gastro pub food was invented in London, because, that's where the pubs are, and they all have their little version of what you're going to eat. And when you're in London, by the way, it used to be that the food in London was nothing to talk about. In my first trip there, I was in my 20s, a long time ago. I came back, I had some good meals, and people were like, you can't eat good food in London. Well, that certainly has changed. So one of the things you're going to have when you go to London is you're going to find fish and chips. Get yourself some fish and chips, and in their case, chips, I talked about the language a little bit. In their case, chips, of course, refers to French fries. And their fish is fried fresh in a beautiful crispy batter. You're going to have that with with whatever, but they have it with what you call malt vinegar. Lovely, beautiful piece of fried fish, fantastic French fries, and really good eating. Now, that said, one of the things that I do as a food person is I always go explore what I think is the biggest and best food market. Oftentimes open air, sometimes covered, sometimes tented, sometimes on weekends only, sometimes during certain days of the week. But this is my way of telling you that I went to the Borough Market, and I've been there before. It's one of the great markets, the Borough Market, and a super nice walk from anywhere you are in London. But the Borough Market, man, is a central market where you will experience every different type of food and produce. Fresh fish and seafood and meat and poultry and vegetables and bread and cheese and wine, and the list goes on and on. One of the exciting things about a market like the Borough Market is not only to see what's available, not only to see what's being farmed locally and what's being fished locally, but also to sample some of it. And when I say sample, I mean eat. And when I say eat, I mean stuff. I mean, you may pass by the cheese guy and he goes, hey, you want to try a piece of this, blue cheese? Because those people, they got some beautiful cheese in England. Just, Stilton is the famed blue cheese. But so you have a little taste of that. And then you pass by, the people that are doing cider, and you may have a sip of that. And then you pass by. Well, the point is that you could certainly sample your way around the borough market, but at some point you go, hey, you know what, I'm hungry. And here's the beauty. In that market and surrounding that market are about 100 different things that you can eat. Prepared food, delicious prepared food. Your most difficult decision is to figure out, as mine was, what am I going to do here? Because I see a guy making a fresh mushroom risotto that he gives me a taste of, and I tasted it and I thought, okay, this is good. I'm just going to have mushroom risotto. But I held off. I didn't want to blow my shot too soon, as it were. And then somebody is doing like a Spanish paella filled with fresh seafood. I'll be damned if that wasn't tempting to me. And then I float around, and there's a half a dozen, at least, maybe let's call it a dozen different places that you can stop and go, that's what I want to eat today. Tremendous variety of awesome-looking foods. For me, I end up at a place called Wright Brothers. And they're not even cooking the food. They are literally shucking giant oysters. And that's where I'm going. And all they sell are oysters and wine. And all I need are oysters and wine. And these oysters are phenomenal. You pick up your own sauce on the side. And they are smart enough to have sauce mignonette, which is the classic accompaniment to big, fat British oysters. Red wine, vinegar, pepper, shallots, a little touch of that in your oyster, and you slurp that down with a nice sip of Sancerre wine, and it doesn't get better. I mean, it's just gorgeous food, delicious, and if you don't like oysters, there's 100. All right, I exaggerate. There's got to be 50 other places that you can eat within about 100 yards. The borough market. I will tell you that in addition to the market and what you find there, and in addition to the fish and chips that you will have to find somewhere along the way, they're big department stores, and by big I mean Selfridges, and I mean Harrods, the most famous probably department store in the world, have giant food halls down in the basement. And so if you're a food person, you probably want to make your way to Selfridges or over to Harrods especially, and go down and check out the food hall. And again, it's a situation where you're going to have to choose from one of hundreds of different places, and everybody is selling something that looks good. I mean, really good. Now, the thing about this trip, and I had my, I had my oysters, I had my gastropub fare, and it was really delicious food. I had my fish and chips, because you don't want to go to London and not have that. But I ended up, for whatever reason, having a kind of what I would call like a Pan-Asian festival, by which I mean that in my week there, I had Chinese food, Thai food, Vietnamese food, Malaysian food, Indian food, and Filipino food. And I mean, one was better than the rest. There's not a restaurant that I went to for Asian food that I was disappointed by. I mean, just it started off for me. I think I mentioned Selfridge, the department store, and they just opened a branch of a Chinese place. It's called Din Tai Fung. Now, I've eaten in Din Tai Fung before in Singapore. It's Chinese food. It's going to be things like soup dumplings. It's going to be beautiful noodle dishes. It's going to be sautéed kind of beautiful greens, like pea shoot greens. Fantastic. So for Chinese, they literally just opened London's first Din Tai Fung over there in the Selfridge's department store in London. Then I went for Thai food at a very unique restaurant called Kiln, K-I-L-N. Yeah, like what you would make ceramic pottery in. 2 floors to the restaurant. You're seated as a solo guest or as a twofer downstairs. I think the larger parties go upstairs. The action is downstairs. They're playing music. There's super energy in the place, and you're watching them cook killer Thai food. I mean, delicious. I think the one thing I want to say about Kiln, because it's been recognized by Michelin, so this is a place that people know about. People wait online over there. They what you call queue up. Londoners don't mind queuing up. I hate queuing up. But the good news is that you pop into a Kiln and you say one person, and they go, okay, it's going to be a half an hour, but they take your phone number, so in that half an hour, you go to the closest pub down the street, get yourself a nice beer, and wait for the text to come in, say table's ready. Long story short, my half-hour wait was an hour and a half, and I'm not even complaining because at the end of the day, look, it happened. But they were super nice about it. They bought me an extra this, they got me an extra that, and the food in there was rock solid, awesome. Kiln for Thai food. And unusual and interesting, great food over there. I found a Vietnamese restaurant that I passed by over there in Soho, so it's not terribly far from the theater district. It's called Viet Food. Again, a 2-story place, and a place if you go at a certain time, you're going to wait online. I was lucky. I went for a late lunch. I walked right in and sat down. They had a lunch special. The lunch special cost me, I'm going to say £7.90, so £8. Figure that's going to be around 11 bucks. And it was one of those box lunches, so you get lemongrass grilled chicken, a huge portion of rice, some nice vegetables, and a lovely salad. My wine glass cost me just as much as the meal. The meal was like $7.80, the wine was $7.90. I love it, but I also love not only that the food was delicious. They had 2 sauces on the table. One, the red hot sauce, and another was a green sauce. And the green sauce was not terribly hot. It was just fragrant, herbaceous, delicious. I dumped that green sauce all over the rice. Excuse. Let me get a little sip of agua. Because you talk this much and you can get a little... Let me take a quick break. Yeah, I was saying, one of the things that I liked about the place so much, not only was the food and the price and the green sauce, but it's mom and pop. I mean, mom is serving and there's one son working and somebody else is in the kitchen, and there's just something charming about a family that makes their living doing this. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm going back there because I want that food, yummy meal. I had Indian food, and one of the things that I tell people, I give a little class for the 92nd Street Y on a variety of subjects, but one of the subjects I call culinary tourism, how to basically find delicious food anywhere you go in the world. And one of the things you want to know when you go to London is a huge population of Indian people. And that translates into a lot of really good Indian food. And I ended up at a place called Quilon, Quilon. And I was impressed. And again, this is like Michelin recognized. This is not one of those kind of walk in off the street, lovely family-run Indian places. This is Indian at a higher level. And I will say, well worth it. Delicious, delicious Indian food. And whenever I go for Indian food, I want to make sure that, you're going to have some kind of great Indian bread, fantastic. You're going to have maybe a rice dish like biryani into which you can put whether you like shrimp or chicken or vegetables, whatever else. Outstanding, speaking of shrimp, they were doing tandooris and tikka masalas and, but a little bit more elevated, high-end stuff, Quilon, really fantastic Indian food. And then I saved the best for last because on my tour of kind of Asian, I didn't even mention the Malaysian place that I went to. I go to a Malaysian food, it's called Gopal's Corner. And if you haven't had Malaysian food and you like food, get your hands on Malaysian food because holy wow, that is some Flavor Flav, baby. I mean, you get yourself some Malaysian food, and they're serving it with again, it's going to be a beef rendang, for example, or a chicken rendang. It's in a sauce that is just a chock full of Malaysian flavors. That you will have either with rice or some of the Malaysian bread. Fantastic Malaysian food, Gopal's Corner. I'd go there again in a heartbeat. Now that's one where you order, then you're going to sit and you bring a little tray to your table. This is not fancy eating, but oh wow, this is supremely delicious food. And I would encourage anybody who has not had Malaysian food to get your hands on it and just try different things. I mean, I had the rendang, which is like, I don't even think you can call it a curry, but it may very well be. It's just that it was red, fragrant with all the Malaysian spices. Fantastic food over at Gopal's Corner for Malaysian food. And I did save the best for last because I discovered a Filipino restaurant called Sarap, Sarap. And I'm going to tell you that meal that I had at Sarap was top 10. And when I say top 10, I'm not talking London. I'm talking almost lifetime. I mean, the meal that I had at Sarap was so memorable because we went in for a special that the restaurant offers, and it's lechon. And lechon is a roasted pork in general, which, the Spanish people, like if you're in New York and you want to have lechon, it's oven-roasted chunks of pork that are redolent of different Spanish flavors, garlic and oregano predominantly, and a sour orange, and just really great eating. Here at Sarap Filipino Bistro, if you got a bunch of people, and I'm talking about 8 to 10 people, and you got the money, and here I'm talking about, maybe 295 pounds, but again, split 10 ways, they'll roast up the whole baby pig for you. And that's what we did. And that pig has been roasting for a long time, and so when it comes out, and they put it on the table in the back before they carve it open. That skin is like glass. That skin alone is worth the price of admission. But the roasted pig and the sides that come with the dinner and the rice that was roasted inside that pig made this meal easily, as I said, one of the great lifetime meals. I loved this meal so much. Now, of course, the highlight is going to be the soft and succulent and flavorful pig. The rice inside absorbed all the earthiness from the meat. And when the rice came out, they took a mushroom and truffle mixture, folded in, shaved black truffles on top. This is the rice that dreams are made of. And you get a couple of side vegetables. And you want those vegetables to be kind of like vinegary. So anything that looks like pickled vegetables or slaw goes well with this. I suppose it's great with cold beer or a beautiful spicy white kind of wine. Sirop Filipino Bistro, holy wow, an entire roast pig, I love you. God, I would go back to London and repeat all the food that I ate. And the bike that I rode around Hyde Park, and the museum and the show, and just floating around that town, just fantastic, just great. And they also have, I should say, they have different snacks from what we do. They have Cadbury over there. I know you think we have Cadbury over there, but I don't even think they export their best stuff to us anymore. But one of the supermarkets over there is called Marks and Spencer. And I'm going to leave it on this. You go to Marks and Spencer, and you immediately look up M&S, Marks and Spencer, and they're all over the place. I mean, there aren't as many of those as there are Pret-a-Manger, which you'll see on every corner. But Marks and Spencer, you'll see a lot of them. It's their local supermarket, and M&S is the brand name. And they have a cookie that they make there that they call Extremely Chocolatey. And there are three versions. There is a white chocolate version, and there is a milk chocolate version, and there is a dark chocolate version that comes on a ginger biscuit. So for those you have to like ginger, the other two, all you need to know, as it says on the box, is more chocolate than biscuit. For a couple of bucks, a couple of pounds as it is, you get yourself over to a Marks and Spencer as you're floating around London. I turned my wife on to these cookies, and the next thing I know, we were at a Marks and Spencer, and she filled up and brought back to America 10 boxes to give to her friends. So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen of the world, my friends, here on All You Can Eat today, I'm recommending a couple of things, and one is London Always Great. Just great fun, lot to do, lot to see, plenty to eat and drink, great. London, England. And remember, if you're in the market for peanuts, or if you're not getting the market, Hubs is the brand that you are looking for. Big, fat, crunchy, tasty, delicious Virginia peanuts. And if you're listening and you are interested to find me and what I'm doing, you can always go to realrobrosenthal.com, and you'll see what I'm up to, and you can find me in social media. And when you find me in social media, you might even find that I'm teaching a class at New York's prestigious 92nd Street Y. Next up, at some time in May, I give the class on culinary tourism, and you can bet I'll be discussing how to find great food around London and some of the many other places that I've been fortunate enough to visit. Even as we recover from this period of hibernation, it's time to get back out into the world. So realrobrosenthal.com is a place that you can find me. If you're into cooking, I would remind you, if you have not heard before, I am the author of a cookbook. It's called Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free, because that's how I roll. I want delicious. I want it fast. I don't want a lot of ingredients. I want it hassle-free, and I want it to taste good and be easy. Short order dad. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. All You Can Eat, episode number 124. I will be back with you soon. But until that time, enjoy yourself, stay healthy, and remember this, life is short, so never waste a meal.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on